And hey guys, welcome to yet another episode of Chronic Nirvana. And today we're
The
talking
restart.
about an issue, huh?
The restart.
The restart. Also, because we fucked up recording the first one,
As
we
candid
can't-
as possible.
as candid, bro. Like, and to be honest, I've really looked forward to this podcast because it's an issue that we've been wanting to address on this podcast, and we think
Yeah.
it's so important. And this definitely is the first of many down this series.
Yeah,
I don't
100%.
think it's an issue that can be addressed just in one podcast, or it's an
Yeah.
issue that we can learn about.
Like
just in
each
one.
person is gonna have like a different outlook and like different experiences dealing with this
Absolutely.
topic for sure.
And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest for this podcast. Please say hello to Noorain Fathima. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So I'm gonna let you take care of this, Noorain. So why don't you tell everyone what you do and why you're passionate about mental health and your, before we
Experiences.
delve into it
Yeah.
deeply, just a general summary of your experience.
Like your
in the
CV,
field.
just go through your CV.
Exactly, just go through your CV.
You don't want me to do that. That's pretty long. But I will give you like a.
That's what she said.
That's the first. No, that's the first time a girl has said that.
Okay, guys. Okay, so basically, I've done my bachelor's at Middlesex University. So I did my psychology with counseling skills, and then I went ahead and pursued MSc in counseling psychology. So yeah, basically, I've been into psychology like ever since 11th grade, and yeah, I've worked with clients of various age groups, different kinds of problems, concerns, but mainly adolescents and young adults, so our age group, and yeah, so like that's what I've been doing from the past 5 years, but I've only recently started taking sessions, so it's been like a year, I think, and I have done like a lot of free of cost counseling sessions in order to raise awareness. And I'm a part of a few helplines, and yeah, I do these live webinars in order to raise awareness and stuff like that. So yeah, that's about me for now. If you have more questions, ask.
That's brilliant.
She's just dramatic. Like, do you have more questions? Ask now. Like, I'm ready.
Forever
to go,
hold your
like,
peace.
Yeah, like it's almost ending. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, that honestly is. It's so good to see somebody doing this.
Thank you.
Like before we started recording, you were saying something about researching, and why don't you tell us a little bit about your research and like what your expertise is?
Okay, so basically, I love to research. That really gives me like I think I'm more passionate about that. So currently, just recently, I did like a research on self-compassion, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So looking at how people are going through so many different types of losses, let it be with the loved ones, losing jobs, losing of routines, as simple as that. It really is getting to people's mental health, and I feel like it's something which is out of our control. We really can't control the pandemic, so I thought it's really important for people to start cultivating self compassion within them, so they're able to be kind to themselves during a time which they really can't do anything about. So it's basically what I researched on. So I developed like an intervention, and I it's like just a 5-day intervention which was online, and the results were pretty good. Like it did work on a lot of people. So yeah, that was the most recent research. And before that, I was doing it on university students, academic procrastination, and stuff like that. Yeah.
So you've been dealing with a lot of young adults, and I think one thing that a lot of people need to understand that they probably haven't is obviously I'm not qualified enough to speak about it, so please feel free to correct
Yeah.
me if and when I'm most likely
Likewise,
wrong.
yeah.
Like
Both of us, we're just here for
and
learning.
and it's about just acknowledging the role of mental health in general. Now, a lot of people think that just because you have a mental health issue, it needs to be diagnosed or labeled as something. When my experience of it has solely just been how similar mental health is to physical health. Like there are days where your arm hurts or something. Doesn't mean your arm is fractured or you have,
Yeah, you have to get a
an
new
airline
arm.
fracture. It's
Yeah.
just that your arm hurts. And
Yeah.
do you would you agree that mental health is sort of the same way? There's like ups and downs, but like it's not necessary that it needs to be diagnosed at that point or labeled as something. It could just be just another aspect of your being that people have generally not acknowledged.
For the longest time. Yeah, true.
Okay. And with that being said, there's a wide spectrum of, mental health. I won't say even issues, but just a spectrum of how it flows in general, right? There are days where you're in a great mental space, there are
Yeah.
days where you have your lows, and then, depending on the situation, the lowest of those lows can be diagnosed as
As
a
a
problem
disorder.
versus,
Yeah.
otherwise it's not really a problem, it's just a phase, I'm guessing, right?
Okay, so from what I have seen, the reason why I don't diagnose people is number one, I actually do not have the qualification. But other than that, also, like, to a great extent, we do get an understanding when a client comes in, like, okay, maybe this person has this particular problem. And that's because all our education system talks about, labeling a person in a particular category. So, for example, okay, you have loss of appetite, you have loss of sleep, you are not able to socialize, or you go under depression. You are a depressed individual. But what I like advocate is like to not put a label on the person, because it simply adds a pressure to not be depressed. Okay, and sometimes a lot of genetic factors and a lot of other factors that might cause them to be the way they are. And these sometimes you can't really change a few things, but yes, you can manage it and get better. So like, I don't believe in the concept of diagnosing, even if you really qualify for a diagnosis according to the book. But just looking at the person as unique and they're having certain concerns, that automatically lowers the pressure that I have to get treated, I have this particular problem, I have to solve it. Because sometimes some things you can't solve, you can manage. So that's the way I look at it. So that's my you know take on it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it, because, like most things, people usually look at it as black or white, right?
Yeah.
Like, most any like just generally, and I feel like things like mental health is like there's no black and white. It's just all seems to be gray.
Exactly, it's a very gray area. Even the subject psychology, there are a lot of things that the book will not explain, and it's okay, because we all are what human beings, and not everybody's story is written, and you can't really compare it to just a few lines. I think that's something we've been taught. Like our education system, not to be mean to anybody, but like it's this the book.
Fuck CBSE.
Watch our fifth episode, and we kind of break that down.
We just
Yeah. Free advertising
Yeah.
right here, unnecessary.
A lot of people who actually like support it. I think they need to watch that too. Yeah,
Wait, are they not your clients?
let's not go there.
It sounds so shady. It's like, you've seen, like, I feel like Noorain's like the rogue therapist. Like, you have drug dealers and Noorain in the same category. Like, hey, I'm trying to find some coke, I'm trying to find some counseling. You go to the same shady road in Banarghatta and you find it.
Banarghatta, never mind. No.
It's got a very nice park which could
Hey,
be
I
like
fucking studied in Banarghatta. What do you say?
Seriously, it's so far away.
It's so far away.
But so zoning into this, right? Like your experience has been with young adults, and what sort of issues do you? Of course, I know each person's different, of course, but what would you say are predominant concerns? So, like, I want to examine the cause and effect. Like, for example, is the leading source of stress parents? Is it society? Is it the education system? And I know it's yes for all of them, but I'd like to get your perspective on what role each of those
Wait,
people
I'd just
play.
like to add one more thing to
Yeah.
the category. What about self-inflicted? All of the above.
Yes, all and self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Like, what have your experiences been with, these four factors being a cause?
Yeah. Hmm. All of them equally contribute, and it depends on the person's story. But I believe in this thing called personal is political. Okay, so it basically talks about how your external forces to a great extent shape how you are internally. Like we are born with very little knowledge. Obviously, we're like blank slate basically. And we grow up, we experience things, we see our parents, they teach us how to behave in certain situations. For example, like boys, okay, just a very general example, I don't know if you guys relate to it, but men are told not to cry, right? And that's something that parents go like, boy, stop crying. It just starts from those small statements, and we internalize it and we reinforce it to a point where we start to believe that boys do not cry. Then we pass it on to our children. So it's like a whole line of in, whole line of internalizations which are really messed up.
Honestly, it's popped off for me in the worst possible place, because, like, you say don't cry and shit, right? Like, I'd repressed some emotions for a while, to the point where, I kid you not, I cried after a football game. Like, I don't know what triggered it. Like, I just had a really bad game, and these were people I hadn't even played with before,
Yeah.
right? I had a bad game, and I broke down in front of them. They still make fun of me. They're like, Nikhil's the guy who cried after football, but I like
No way.
and
Yeah.
and it's not bad or anything, but like, no one demonized me for it. It was a laugh.
Yeah.
I laughed about it later because it was just so random. But it comes off at such a random time because sometimes it's like a floodgate that you can't restrain. It just
Yeah.
flows out.
For sure.
And that's a shitty stigma that people have
Yeah.
of men.
So just imagine this is like one stigma. So there's so many stigmas like this and so many societal messages. So what happens is that's what contributes to this deteriorating mental health because you start feeding in things which really don't belong to you.
Now, considering that you've therapized people, or like you've held sessions, and you're a part of those hotline services and stuff. I'm not making this sound like prostitution. It is.
God. Helpline, Nikhil, helpline.
Helpline. Sorry, not hotline.
Yeah, if you want to take it that way, sure. Quite a perspective there. Huh.
Yeah.
But no. So before I got sidetracked, the point I wanted to ask was you've been witness to these cases. You've seen the transformation. You've seen the cause. You've seen the reaction to that, and you've seen the process that people go through to overcome those particular you know issues, right? In whatever way you want to term it. How would you, or not? How would you like? What's been your experience of that? Could you like? I know you can't divulge entire details, but could you walk us through, like, say, a particular case? How someone, how did you diagnose it? How did they? What point did they feel like, okay, this is when I need help, and how did they overcome that?
So the thing is, it varies from person to person. But generally, what we notice is when it really pulls you back when you're not feeling your best, and when you feel that a lot of aspects of your functioning have been dysfunctional or they're not up to what you used to be. You start feeling isolated, withdrawn from people, and this is not necessary that everyone has to experience it, but some people do, and this is what generally people do. Again, it's not generalizing everybody. So early signs would be like it depends on what issue they are going through. So if it's, for instance, like depression, it would be like social withdrawal and loss of appetite, sleep, or maybe an increase in appetite and sleep. Or you might have like just fatigue, feeling really tired, and people call it laziness. So all of these things could be early signs, but again, it's not necessary that you have to tick the box to meet a diagnosis and label yourself, oh, I'm depressed. So these are just few early signs. Basically, you don't feel comfortable in your own skin. You feel like there's something wrong, but you don't address it because of the stigma around. That itself shows that you might require or you might need somebody to objectively help you out, and that's what therapists do. It's not that we solve their issues. We can't do that. We are also humans, and we are just like figuring it out with them. So we just like provide them with a space where what usually other humans want to, we do it. Like listen non-judgmentally, be empathetic, and look at them as just human beings. So even if they have like majorly messed up in a few areas, we go like, it's fine, do chill, we'll figure it out together. So it's a very collaborative thing.
Is that why you were so accommodating of me in school? Like, despite me being a grade A asshole, is that okay? Those lash outs were pretty. That was well deserved.
I think at that time, like, I just never took it to my head. You would say it, I'm like, yeah, let him talk. Who knew 5 years later?
I never said it with
Yeah.
malice, but all divergence aside, now when people do come up with those sort of, when they face that, right? I'm assuming you provide a space where you guide them to a solution on their own, like the solution that works for them. It's kind of about self-realization, right? Like, and awareness that this is what I need to do to overcome this. Is that what you do?
So exactly, it's like we try to help them so that they can figure it out themselves. But sometimes because we have so many thoughts, emotions, and we're so upset at that point of time, we can't see like this. The clarity gets lost, and that's when we step in because we don't know the person. We just know them as a human being, so we get like a better outlook of what they're really going through. And they were like, "Dude, you're going through this. What do you want to do about it?" And even then, if they're not able to figure it out, we do suggest. It's not that we don't suggest at all, but we suggest it with a checkout, like is this fine with you? So, you asked me previously about like a case and how did I know that, did they really get treated in the end? So, again, like I'll just share a little of it. So, it was like a 15-year-old girl, and she's an adolescent, and she was going through She had vitiligo, and it's like a genetic condition, and there's not like any proper cure for it as far as I know, but I might be wrong, I'm not sure. So she came in with a lot of self-confidence issues, and she knew it was affecting her because every situation used to get her anxious, like what are people thinking about me, am I being cool enough, am I being accepted, something we faced in school like many of us. So all of that started like creeping in, and she knew she needed help, so she came, and we started working on so many things, and we realized that the main cause of it was like fed from somewhere completely different. It wasn't even her. So it was like her mother and her father constantly telling her who's going to get married to you now, like with these white patches, and who's going to like talk to you, and friends going like, dude, you're ugly. So you see, like a lot of her negativity came from outside, and she herself was like, I don't think I'm that bad, but like what about what all these people say. So we started working on throwing those dialogues out of her and starting to build her own internal talk, like yeah, I have these white patches, so what, I'm good at music as well, I'm good at this as well, so it doesn't define me. And that's how she got empowered.
How did you like go about that process? I'm very curious. Like, how did you get her to over time to embrace her positives? Like, what
Yeah.
were those steps that you took?
Yeah, so there's so many techniques that we learn, right? So like since I've done a master's, so I have like more techniques in my toolkit. So there's something called assertiveness training that helped her. There's something called self-talk, which is something I really believe in. So we all have a self-talk, right? So we did a few visual exercises in which I told her to imagine herself in social situations, and she was like, okay, I'm telling this to myself right now in my mind, okay. And then we wrote those down, and then when we analyzed it, it was all like from outside. And then I showed her that and saying, see, this is what I see. What do you see? And she's like, okay, wait, even I see this. And that's where the insight came in. And she's like, okay, I want to work on it. And I'm like, okay, let's change it. So one by one, the white patches look ugly. Start looking at it like, okay, I have a condition. So what? So like that's when she started changing her internal dialogue. And this happens over a period of time. It's not an overnight process because, for 15 years, she's been fed one thing. And then all of a sudden, after 5 sessions, I'm like, change. So it took time, but I think by the end of our 15th session, she was quite assertive. She could stand for herself. The anxiety, which was her main problem, it reduced because she had got the confidence back. She's like, these patches don't define me. So she started like placing.
And
That's
how did
pretty
she
awesome.
stand up to her parents?
Okay, yeah, so that was the challenge. She belonged to my community, that's Muslims. So it was quite difficult to convince them that she's a girl and she wanted to get educated and she wanted to pursue a career. So her parents are like, no, you have to get married by 18. That was in 3 years, like she was 15, right? So I told her, you don't need to be mean. You just need to like put your point out and just stand firm to it. And I gave her an option. This is just like one way, and we practiced it. I role played with her basically. Like I acted like her mom, she acted like herself, and then she built the confidence. And once her parents like saw that, she was lucky enough that they really understood. And I had a session with them as well, and I showed them how, like, I gave an example of myself and how my parents have been and how I'm just fine. Like I can choose things for myself, and it opened up a mind. So it's like one therapy session actually influenced 5 6 minds at one shot. So it's like a societal change. So that's how I went about that case. There's so many like this, but yeah, but every case is unique, so it takes its own time and whatever.
For sure. Fair enough. Just cycling back to, how most of our problems weren't internal, like it was external problems. Is this the case in most of the cases? Like, if you see like somebody with a problem, is it usually like external factors that make that problem, or is it usually internal?
I believe it's a mix of both, right? Some people have genes which make them more anxious compared to, like other people. Like, they're more predisposed. So if they get a particular environment that causes the anxiety to increase, it's going to increase. So I believe like it's an interplay of both. It's like nature versus nurture. It's just, like completely can't say that it's this or this. So that's why it's a very gray area, and, it really depends.
That's fair. And like, so I just wanted to get your opinion on this. So in Portugal, like a couple of years ago, like long time ago, there was like insane amount of drug cases. I think we might have had this discussion.
It's drug related, bro.
It's not. Yeah.
Of course, we fucking had this conversation.
Okay.
Why wouldn't we have this conversation? I'm about
Yeah.
like, I'm just waiting until when you're going to bring the other thing up.
David Nutt.
Fuck you, man.
No, but but essentially, like my point was, so like it used to be criminalized. Obviously, like there was like a massive heroin epidemic, and people were dying on the street. Like there was so much drug crime, And basically, the government, instead of treating this as as a crime and it needs to be prevented by making it super legal, basically the Portuguese government just decriminalized it, and they treated it like a disease, they were treating a pandemic. So they basically, I've said basically so much, but essentially they looked at it as a disease, that was spreading across the city, and then they started curing it. They were like, this is not a problem. This is it's a problem because of your
Is
surroundings.
this the place where they literally had like centers where they said, listen, if you want crack or meth, we'll administer it to you safely so that you don't do some dumb shit? Because
maybe
someone, I don't know who, but someone actually did that, and that worked wonders. They were just like, look, you want to get fucked up? No, you want heroin? No problem. Come here, we'll do it for you.
Yeah,
So you don't stab the worst artery or while
use some old ass.
exactly or get AIDS along with getting high. Like,
But my point with the conversation being usually it seems like the societal change that resulted from this was so effective that it actually worked.
So I think that's where that just shows the importance of not labeling people. Like, when you label someone like, oh, you are a drug abuser, and you need to be, criminalized for it, automatically, it sets in a very violent response. So when you start looking at them as humans who've had a past and, who are using these things because maybe they're dealing with their own past experiences and all of that, then the whole thing changes. It's basically reframing it and not labeling people, which actually brings in quite a big change. So yeah, that's something I think that's why it worked, but I've not read much about it, so I don't want to comment further on that.
Okay. Fair enough.
so when now obviously you've been telling or you've been applying techniques from your toolkit while dealing with your is patients the right word, or is it like clients okay, clients, sorry.
Hotline.
Hotline. We're gonna put Noorain's hotline down below.
Yeah. It's 869.
No, so what I wanted to ask you was, now they've come to you to where you've kind of provided them a solution that's very catered to them, but like you said, these at the end of the day, these are techniques, right? Can these techniques be applied by people themselves? Like, for example, if I'm going through something and if I kind of realize that, okay, shit, I think that there's issues that I need to address, are these techniques where I can read and sort of apply? Like, how easy, hard is it? Like, would you need someone to do that with you? Or like, can you get a lay person? Like, for example, like, say I'm going through a bad time and you talk about these what are some of the names you said? I'm sorry, it didn't immediately click. Assertiveness training, etc. So if you kind of have a little bit of a guidebook on it and I tell Dakshay that, bro, can you read this, and then can I bounce my things off it? Is that something that's possible at all?
Yes, it's possible. There's so many, if you really go out there's so many self-help workbooks that have been released. Like, even regards to self-compassion, for instance, there are workbooks where you can just read it and learn it yourself. There are a lot of things that you can learn by yourself. So the reason why people come to therapists is because they don't know that they can learn it by themselves. Plus, we give them additional help, and that is mainly listening to them and supporting them, which a book won't give you. Okay, and I feel that's the main thing, just listening out and being genuine. So that's what therapy does. But otherwise, there are a lot of techniques that you can learn by yourself. Like all what I told you, it's like you can YouTube and learn it, and just that knowing how to apply it is where we can guide you. But the learning thing is really yours.
Now, at this point, like considering where we've gone with this podcast, right, something that I'd like to and a topic I'd like to shed light on are some of these techniques, if you'd be okay with sharing them, so that people who are listening to this podcast, if they feel like they know someone or they themselves are going through something and they feel like they could take a few things from here, so they could search for the right keyword, or know, or at least try some of these techniques out themselves. So not everyone may have the right resources or find the right self-help book. Not everyone might want to even buy it, or so that's the whole idea of a podcast where we talk about it.
People also are afraid to admit it to themselves.
Exactly. And when we talk about this on a podcast, right, we want to be able to tell people that, hey, these are the things which you can potentially Google. Like, here are the terms, here are the keywords, here's a little something about it, and here's what you can do. And that's one of the reasons I we're really glad to have you here so that you can maybe just summarize some of these techniques that people can apply. And if you could shed light on what needs two people and what needs only one person, so that going forward people can just pick up on that summary, and if they feel like that works, they can delve deeper into it. And we'll even put in her contact info so you can talk to her if anything comes up.
Be more than happy to help. Okay, yeah, I can tell a few things, but again, it depends on the person and the current, scenario. But I think some things that you can do by yourself is like, self-talk is something I do it myself, and I didn't learn it in my therapy or such. Okay, I just like, learned it by myself initially. So it basically talks about identifying your inner critic. Okay, so what happens, like we're so used to criticizing ourselves, like, oh man, what the hell, I'm such a failure, look, I didn't do that, properly, I'm like so bad at it, I'm so worthless, I don't look good, and there's so many things I can like go on with, basically a negative self-talk, which a lot, like all of us in fact engage in it at some level. But what happens with a few people, it becomes so repetitive, it really like starts deteriorating the mental health. That's when the first step I would advise people or suggest is to identify that you do have an inner self-critical talk, which is okay. Start writing those down. Maintaining a journal is really important, so when you write down, you're able to see your own patterns. It leads to more self-awareness, and you're like, okay, this is I'm constantly having an issue with failing, so my problem is I'm scared to fail. And then with that, you like start thinking, okay, what are the different ways in which I can change the way I talk to myself. And that's when self-compassion comes in. Start to be more kind to yourself, like, okay, I failed this one time, but maybe next time it can be like way better than this. Or like for instance, like if someone is in a stressful situation and they're like, oh, my loved one is going to die, but actually there's equal evidence supporting the person surviving as well, especially in this COVID-19 thing. So at that time, saying like, being able to tell yourself like, no, there's an equal chance of them surviving as well, so let me not jump to conclusions. So those are certain distorted thoughts that people usually go through. So being able to identify that and replacing it with something more realistic and more positive is one technique which I would highly recommend, because I have used it and it really helps me. So that is one thing, especially during this pandemic. The other thing is, writing letters to yourself and, showing that, you love yourself. And how you do that is just imagine yourself as, a friend, and, how you would treat someone. So, for example, Nikhil's not going through a good time, just an example, okay? And he reaches out to me, I would maybe like respond to him in a much more nicer, genuine, supportive way than compared to me when I'm going through something similar. You get it? So being able to find that and go like, why don't I treat myself the same way? So maybe writing a letter, compassionate letter to yourself. People think it's really lame and they call it silly, but trust me, these have been researched, and they do help, and we do give this in sessions, and it's actually help people. And you can do it yourself, it doesn't require any
like a diary sort of situation.
diary, basically maintaining a journal, that's what we say. And another thing is being more mindful of your emotions. So if you're feeling sad, saying, okay, I feel sad, it's not a bad thing. Usually people run away from unpleasant emotions, so if they're anxious, they immediately distract themselves, like, okay, I can't feel anxiety. But the truth is, we all feel anxiety at some level, okay? Some people really intense, some people not much. So being able to just say, okay, I'm feeling anxious right now, what do I need? Like maybe something to calm you down, but not denying the experience of an emotion. So these are a few things like I would suggest, but there are a lot of things out there. You can just like Google, and I'm not saying you should rely completely, but there are a few like reliable resources out there, especially in regards to self-compassion, since I've researched. So people can always get in touch with me.
I was just hoping you can drop a few more keywords that are more Googleable, rather than if someone goes like mental health issues and then like, because that just opens up different cans of worms.
Yeah.
You don't know where you can get a reliable source from. So there is self-talk, and then there's writing to yourself. Um, and the reason why I'm like pretty insistent on it at the moment is actually because there are a lot of people who might be 15, 16. I don't know who watches this podcast, to be honest, like the
Yeah.
handful of 10 people that do.
Yeah.
But
Maybe they might be 50, 60 to them.
I don't know. But the idea is that at some point you're kind of insecure to even embrace that in front of your parents. And in some
Yeah.
cases, like you rightly mentioned, like in the case of the girl, the parents would not admit to it. Even though if you tell your parents that I have mental health issues,
Yeah.
they'll just dismiss it.
And dismiss it even more that they are the problem.
Exactly,
Which is-
and it affects them even worse. So
Yeah.
the reason why I'd wanted over here is so that they'd have at least one step sort of covered. Like, yeah, if they can't reach out and get help,
Yeah.
at least they've got
Awareness.
we're at least helping them
Yeah.
start off in some very very small way
Yeah.
that
And-
could perhaps help them get into a slightly better space and get the pain from here to maybe here.
Yeah. And like, feel like they're not alone in this situation.
100%.
That's like I think the most important, to be able to feel you're not alone. Like usually people feel really lonely with regards to this because they can't open up. But being a part of a support group and all of that really helps out here, because people are like, a lot of us are dealing with it, including me. Like there are a lot of times when even I feel really like not in a good place. But again, that's where these techniques help. Finding different strategies to get yourself a little more better, things like that.
What else can you share with us? What are the technique? I know there's loads, so I'm not going to pander you much. I'll probably ask you for maybe two more techniques if that's fine.
That's what 5 years of psychology school teaches you, dude.
Yeah.
Like compress everything and give it
Something that,
Like, what's
that
the
you
most
think is
effective?
something that is I would actually say a little easier to apply, and just in
Yeah.
terms of efficient to apply, something that doesn't require someone very learned in psychology or someone who's
Yeah.
super qualified to apply those techniques.
Okay, I think the self-talk thing is something a lot of people apply, like even if you're not a psychologist. Like so self-talk is something I would recommend. Then you have journaling. You can journal your thoughts or you can journal your mood. So there's something called mood diary as well. Then with regards to, there's another thing called reframing, where you try to look at the situation in a different lens, basically. Making sense out of situations differently, changing your perspective. So it's another thing. And another one is feeling, reflection of feeling, where you recognize what you're feeling and you're able to state it. So for example, I'm feeling sad, I'm able to tell I am sad, even if it's not in front of anybody, to yourself. Acknowledging itself reduces quite a lot of the pain. I'm not saying it heals you, but it definitely, like, makes you less, you don't repress it off. So these are like 5 techniques I would give, but it really depends, and there's like a huge pool of knowledge out there.
100%. I'll even like put these in
Yeah, put some links.
words. Yeah,
Yeah.
put some words in. Like, Noorain, if you could share some links that we could potentially share, like
Yeah.
with each of these topics, if you could just give us some links where we could have people click on it to learn more about it.
Yeah.
And I want to just dive into just two situations, right? Which is one, what message would we like to share with parents who might be watching this or listening to this podcast, of the generation, just regardless of where they come from. I doubt like the super conservative
Yeah.
type is going to stay 20 minutes into this conversation with me swearing like,
No, and I'd like to add another point to that thing. Like a lot of like the people from the past generation don't even acknowledge this as
Yeah.
a real thing. Like I've met many elderly people who are like, nah, that's literally doesn't exist. What is anxiety? You're
Yeah.
just being
and they'll pull the whole thing that, well, we fought World War One and we're all
Exactly.
fucking
Yeah.
bitches.
That's the whole thing. And they pass it on to all of us. Like, honestly, it gets reflected in your parenting style, in your relationships. It's like a whole new topic to cover.
But I feel like making and here's the thing, right? Like, both of us are like pretty serial jokers, I would say. Like, we pretty much make fun
Yeah.
out of anything, right?
Yeah.
But it's about making fun in a way that you tell people that it's not targeted at you. No one's you make fun of any, like, I've been through shit, and like, to be honest, like when my friends still make fun of me about the time that I went through a bad time, and this, like, even if they bring it up, I still laugh about it because
Yeah.
I'm over it now. But I just feel like of it, like, there's also the other side of it where people are like, well, you're making a joke and that's fucking offensive. And
Yeah.
that's a separate issue to deal with.
Separate issue. People
But-
are too easily triggered. Karens.
Yeah, people do get easily triggered. I can't like exactly blame them, but so somewhere to find that balance between
Dismissive behavior versus.
yeah, we're acknowledging it and we're just making fun of a situation
Yeah.
versus we're not like really dismissing it. So calm
Yeah.
them titties, both guys and girls. Guys have titties too,
Yeah.
big ones. So
But I mean, what's happening now is like it's become a big deal because there's so many people actually dealing through it. So some of us use humor, like what Nikhil did, even I did to a great extent, and we were able to overcome it. Some people really don't, and you never know what's happening at the back of the mind. So maybe like on the face it looks like, oh, like a triggered individual, but when they come to us and they talk to us, we look at it like, oh my god, that triggered quite a lot, because you never know where they're coming from. Their backgrounds will be so intense. Like for example, you make fun of someone's dad, okay, and it's not a big deal. Like a lot of people laugh it out, which is fine, but you never know what relationship this person had with the dad. And they might have a dad who's actually abusive to the kid, like physically, sexually, you never know. So it triggers like a whole spectrum of other issues. So like that's the reason why, like yeah, so it might be funny at that time, and like, dude, calm down, which is honestly, like, I also went into that when, especially with the whole feminism thing. Like I used to be like, oh man, calm down, man. He's, they're not really making fun, but I saw that it actually does affect quite a lot. It might be a joke for you because you are sorted, you have it clear in your head, but you never know how many people don't have it sorted. So you never know how they spread that.
It's me actually. Before we address the parents and the thing,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you this, right? Though I feel like it's around, how you said that a lot of mental health issues stem from what other people threw at you, right? Now, the world has historically always been a bitch, right? No one's been nice. So, does the burden, like, do you fault people for making fun of you, or do you try and build your own resilience? Like, for example, right? I might not directly want to shit on someone, but like, say I'm just joking, right? And I just make a joke that, unfortunately, never my intention, but someone gets triggered by it, right? And it might kind of just, they have a bad moment. And it's happened to me as well. But my take has been, well, look, it's all like, first off, I understand the dude's joking.
Yeah.
And yeah, it doesn't, like people have made jokes like that, which I haven't fucked with. I just, I'm able to shell it aside because I make those jokes too. Like I make jokes on other matters, but like I mean, I've been in the shoes and I dispel that too.
Yeah.
But how, do you think that dialogue needs to be limited, like jokes need to, because with all seriousness, right? And this is how the world works because there's a balance. The more seriousness there is about something, there's equally going to be jokes,
As many
right?
jokes, for sure.
And there's got to be a middle ground where I feel like people need to understand that jokes are jokes. It's not meant in a certain way, but at the same time, it's equally important. Rather than tell people that, hey,
Don't joke
don't
about
make
it.
fun of me,
Yeah.
isn't it about, well, how do I make sure that I am resilient enough to not let this affect me? Do you think
Interesting.
that is more important, or do you think it's more important for people to, you know, be less mean?
I think it's both, because okay, so both of them have their own impacts. Like if you're more resilient, it's good for you. But if you're able to limit the jokes, then it's good for quite a lot of people. You get it? So it's like a balance. I'm not saying it's bad to joke. Honestly, it's like it happens naturally to most of us, but it's really important to know what you're joking on, and the importance of like communicating. Like sometimes you really might be not, like with the purest intention, you're just joking, and I completely get that, but it's okay to like have a dialogue with that person in case they are hurt. And I feel that's where you build your resilience by communicating with who really made you feel bad.
100%.
That is a very
Exactly.
good point.
That makes more sense. Like if
Yeah.
someone comes to me and tells me, "Yo, I felt offended at that," I will genuinely talk to them and like tell them that, "Hey, this is why I did it. I'm not like not acknowledging your feelings.
Yeah.
So I am sorry for what like it entertained 9 people out of 10 and it didn't for one. But I do. You have a like I apologize and I definitely don't have any ill feelings because
That's the thing. So like these are things like we need to be aware. So the change starts from within us, right? So like we might say that, oh, they are getting so triggered, they're so offended. That's because they are facing it firsthand. And for us, it's just like a few behaviors that we are like categorizing under one category: autism, or like psychotic or mental. But you never know what they're going through. So I think the first thing you can do is change what you are, right? That's the only thing you have control in. Anyways, you can't change everybody, right? So the fact that you got more aware of it just shows like how this whole thing works. You're just aware of your dialogue, and that immediately you try to bring about a change, and that's obviously going to lower its impact on so many people. So your quality of conversation increases. That's all.
And like I feel like in the same way that jokes could be uh, like multiplied multiple times. When you joke about something, many people might listen to it, laugh at it, and then copy that, and
Repeat
then
it, yes.
repeat it. In the same way, self-awareness has that same quality. I
Absolutely.
think a little bit.
Yeah, when you propagate it
Yeah.
and you're kind of telling people you've got to be self-aware, and then they
They're
and
like, okay.
oh yeah, that's a
Yeah.
beautiful fucking point.
Yeah, and also like I feel like that element of humanity and in like general society is reflected in all of the things. I'd imagine that even mental health would be easily transferable between one person and another, because people are just empathetic. You know.
Yeah,
as a
I think,
default.
and it just cycles back to how like kids these days are actually aware of that term and they're respectful of the term. Like
Yeah.
people might make fun of it, but like I can guarantee you that like maybe 2015 or 2014 when I was in school, if I said the words that dude I think I'm going through a bad time mentally,
Yeah.
they'd be like, mate, are you udas? That they,
Yeah.
people call me udas, right?
Yeah.
And at that time I didn't, but I just realized, right, thinking back, shit, I was resilient to an extent like that could. And don't get me wrong, I have been an equal asshole to some people. Like, there was a kid who fucked up studies, and I was just like, wow, you're a perpetual dumb fuck, aren't you? Like, and I was like, okay, I've been a dick, and people have been dicks to me.
Yeah.
And if you, which brings me back to this, right? Like, what message would you, or if you like, just, would we like to share with parents who are tuning in, parents who can probably look at this and probably gain a thing or two? What do we want to convey to them? Noreen first.
The rain first.
For parents, it's really important that they start listening. I think, culture blocks, a lot of parents and even us to a great extent where, we are just like, no, this is how we've learned it all our life and, we can't change it for anyone else. But the first thing is to drop that and to actually be able to listen to what your kid is really going through. Just listen to them. They are human beings as well. You don't have to like conclude or tell them they're wrong. They might even be wrong at, something, they might be doing, bullying someone else. And instead of beating up the kid, listen to why they are doing that, and then maybe have an open conversation. And when you're having this conversation, look at them as human beings, not as like they are under me and I have the right over them. That automatically just loses the essence of parenting, communicating, like the fact that we all are living together. So compassion, so it's really important for them to first listen and then be supportive, and they obviously have the right to give advice, right? That's why they're your parents. So being able to communicate that in a way that is like good for the kid. So not every kid is going to understand through the same tone, so you might have to alter it according, but definitely I would patience and exactly. And if you are a parent, you do have a huge responsibility. And I feel you do need to do the homework of how I can best communicate with my kid. That is your thing. The kid's not going to do it for you. So I feel parents need to just be more open. That's like the first thing. And be more accepting. If they do have mental health issues, see if you can do it at home or whether, you can change it there. Or take them for therapy and, destigmatize it. It's okay to go.
Can you share some resources that that parents could potentially go through? Because like a lot of parents to this day might be close-minded to certain issues as such. So if if a parent's listening in and they feel like, okay, I want to do something about this, what how would you recommend that they go forward? So you did say that they've got to be patient, they've got to listen, they've got uh, are there any sort of, like you said, those techniques about self-talk and journaling as such? um is there anything?
And one thing to add in that point, like parents who need resources for the kids, but as well, like the parents themselves might be facing some
Oh, of course,
difficulties.
yeah, 100, yeah.
So
Like
Yeah, yeah, tell me.
what sort of technique, or what's are there any sort of technical terms or approaches that you could potentially advise parents to take a look at?
Yeah. So I feel like they can inculcate the importance of mental health from a young age. Okay, that's something they do have the power in. So like automatically a lot of things fall into place like as the child is growing, especially in terms of self-esteem and things like that, which are really common problems. So being able to get the child to be confident in who they are, irrespective of whatever the limitations are. If the kid is unable to do well in maths, it's okay. It's just maths. Like move on. There are more subjects the kid might be really good at. So being able to accept the kid for having those limitations and telling them even though you have this, you're still worth it. and that itself, like, can reduce like most of the problems or the usual concerns we see as, psychologists and therapists. So that is one technique, that is being able to talk about mental health openly at home. Another thing is parents themselves might be carrying a lot of past baggage, okay, and it, to a great extent, it gets thrown onto the kid and then they start carrying it. So I'm not going to say every parent should go for therapy, but definitely they do good for them. But there are a lot of support groups that have opened up free of cost, where once a week, a lot of parents with similar concerns meet up and they try to communicate with each other, what can I do best for my kid. That itself like can help you change the way you parent your kid. And another thing is being very authoritative, not authoritarian, okay. Like when I say authoritative, it's like putting boundaries, rules, they are important, not going to deny it, just for your child's safety. But at the same time communicating to the kid that, like, dude, these are the rules of the house, but this is because of this. You get it? It's not like these are the rules, you better follow it, otherwise you're going to get a smack from me. So being authoritative, which is a very psychological word, but that is something I would recommend. Not authoritarian. So there's a difference between the two. And also parents who are giving like extreme amount of freedom, even that to a great extent is not good to the kid.
Yeah, I saw that go wrong with a friend of mine, to be honest. Like, dude was wealthy as fuck, and the moment hardship struck and the guy didn't have money, I'm proud of where he's come along right now,
Yeah.
but like, on a growing child, it puts a big chip on their shoulder that I can afford this, I can do that. So, no, that's great, and I really like this idea that you've come up with, because I think that's something I would actively, advocate to, because we know a lot of people are parents now, and to tell them that please do not make the mistake of
That-
forcing your goals or ideals on your kids, like,
Yeah.
or your ambitions. You
Yeah.
can't, for whatever
Expectations.
it's worth. Yeah, you can't put your ambitions on a kid.
Like, how many of us are really doing what we were forced into? Like, I took up science, okay, my parents didn't force me, but to a great extent it was influenced by the school we were in. And I was like, oh, I have to do science, science is for smart kids, and I did well also. But like, whatever, like after I graduate, I'm like, no, this is not my thing. Like, I think I'm better off understanding people.
I don't think I was forced, but like I was heavily, like, I would say pressure to an extent, because like my mom's a CA, right?
Yeah.
And I've said this story multiple times, and like I don't hold it against my parents at all, and I don't, for whatever it's worth, my perspective has now changed to, hey, look, if I didn't do that,
Wouldn't be here.
I wouldn't be here, and I don't want to debate on what ifs,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to be where I am at the moment. So, for whatever that's worth, I'm thankful for what my parents did. But on a side, yeah, of course, there was a possibility where I could be doing all this like 4 years earlier. Is all I'm trying to say, and but it just comes down to people putting the tag for me was that engineering is safe, when in reality now, when I,
Yeah.
like, when everyone told me that do engineering, you can do anything afterwards, right? It's, and the issue with the problem with that right now is, so I love digital marketing, I love filmmaking, and I love sitting behind all these editing softwares and shit, right? And making, like, I love learning those things, right? But I kid you not, a lot of these opportunities, like when I'm applying for jobs, I'm applying to these places, they're like, we want marketing students. And I'm like, I used to make fun of those fuckers in school. I used to bully them, I used to call them dumb fucks. Now they're getting the opportunities that I want. Like, and
It
it's
just
a
reached a
reality.
point of market saturation.
Yeah, and I just feel so scammed. I'm like, I did 4 years of engineering, and look, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I put myself through engineering, did everything on my own, right?
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I do believe that I'm smart enough. If I'm smart enough to do engineering, I'm smart enough to pick up things. I'm not saying I'm smart enough to understand psychology or this thing better than others. Fuck no. My point is that, hey, I can do this too because I actually like it more than
Yeah.
me fucking doing engineering. But people don't believe that anymore. People really don't. They want people who have studied marketing. Like,
Yeah.
and now I see all these kids who are in marketing and whatnot because they wanted to be in marketing. I was talking to a friend, like early this week, and I'm like, mate, like, you chose marketing, and you endured people being assholes to you, and these assholes include teachers,
Yeah.
not just like students. Like, and And that's something that needs, because I feel like they fall under that caveat of like parents as well, because many of them are parents themselves. And when when teachers are supposed to be guides, when they're supposed to be your second parent, right, and they shit on you for doing what you do, like, and that's something we touched in the previous podcast, but the mental effects of that linger on when
For
they
sure.
tell you you're a dumb fuck repeatedly, when they take opportunities away from you, you start getting into the shell thinking that you're not
internalizing
worth
it.
those opportunities.
Yeah, internalizing it.
Yeah, that's literally what I was talking about. So it's not really only parents, it's everything, including your friends, your teachers. And trust me, our teachers, like, no offense, but like our school, I'm not going to say the particular.
That's when you know that they're about to get offended hard. Like, go for it, Noorain.
Yeah.
Full rain, go for it.
That topic triggers me, like, oh god, I hate it. Okay, so the thing is, the fact that science with computers was one, science with PCMB was second, BP, that's mine, was third. Oh, psychology, you don't have maths.
PCMB first, PCMB, then computer science, then economics,
Yeah.
and then psychology was like.
That's what exactly, that is science, imagine. And commerce kids, they had their whole down level. Okay, and then marketing kids, I feel so bad for them. Yeah, and marketing was just not in the list. It was, I'm not.
No. Humanities wasn't in the list.
Oh my god, we had what, I think 10 students in the girls block who took humanities, and two from boys, as far as I remember. And like, they're doing so well, I know all of them, and all of them are just like doing really well for themselves. Okay, and at that time I remember, like, oh, humanities, it really influenced even my way of looking at it. But now when I think back, I'm like, dude, you like, the school messed up. It shouldn't have ever been divided. It would have just been like, all the kids avail equal opportunities. And we had this whole prefectorial system. Oh, only the science kid would get it. If their teacher's kids, oh, even more higher thing. Oh my god, don't ask. Like, it was a whole, level of division and, exclusion. And I think it's affected all of us in a different ways, like different ways. The fact that I took up psychology, I was hated on by my chemistry tuition teacher. Like, she was like, dude, psychology, nothing in life. I mean, like, at the end of the day, the job market requires that more than being a chemistry student. I'm just saying, like, this is how it is. So the whole thing starts from really young, and that's why parents need to play a really important role. If the opportunities have been stolen away, they need to provide them with that. Kids can't always make up their own. How much can we do by ourselves? It's small.
No,
Sorry.
don't think
All
she
right,
spoke to
shit,
parents.
yeah,
Like, what's
okay,
your message to our
about the
parents slash teachers?
Parents slash teachers. Now, she covered a very important point, right? Communication is 100% key. The ability to speak to your kid without having much of a bias on your own. It's like, yeah, it's your kid. Of course, you created him and the genetics are similar, but does not mean that you guys share the same mindset. You know, 100% it could be night and day. It depends on where the kid's grown up. But I feel like a lot of parents, sort of channel what they've learned from their upbringings, which could be in a different place, into like a different, like, take their family to a different place and then still have the same dialogues. So I feel like parents need to understand that they do not know everything, or at least they should enter that conversation acting like they know nothing and then formulating opinions.
Being okay, like, as a parent, being okay to have made mistakes.
Exactly.
And admitting
It's okay.
that you actually aren't someone that, like, yeah, I know everything, and that's like
Yeah.
a huge debate.
And
like, I have at home. Like,
100%, yeah.
like, we each, I go to my dad and straight up tell him that, like, dude, trust me, you don't know everything. Neither do I, but at least I'm okay with it. Like, you.
Exactly. So being open to learning, being open to just having conversations and accommodating opinions. Like, even my parents and me, we do have a lot of differences in a lot of things. But like, we both listen, like, if I have A and they have B, we talk about A and B. We don't talk about, like, you should change A to B, you know?
I'm very blessed that my parents, to an extent, are able to acknowledge the difference and coexist regardless. And I think that's such an important thing that parents have got to do in order to, give kids the confidence and the belief that they can open up to them.
Mainly the peace of mind.
Exactly.
Like,
Like knowing that you have a disagreement,
Exactly.
and like
That's
it's
fine.
okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
And like, acknowledging the fact that we really belong to different generations. Like, the way we have been shaped is so different. We have so much access to so much more information. Our parents had access to, like, very limited things. So like, whatever they were taught, they literally had to take that in because they had nothing else to put into their mind. We have so much, like, we have the freedom to choose what our opinion could be. Like, if you say you don't believe in religion, like, there are 10 other things that go like, okay, you should believe in religion, so I get to choose what I want to pick.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Like, and to the we addressed we addressed teachers and parents.
Yeah.
What's your message to the adolescents, to people who are like what, like 5, 10 years younger than us, yours, you know, to your brother, your sister, like,
Yeah.
what?
I'd let Noorain go first.
Yeah.
I feel like the most important thing is you're not alone. Like, whatever you're going through, like, we all have been through a very similar phase, especially in school, the whole peer pressure, influencing, getting isolated, being made fun of, bullied, etc. So giving them the space that they don't get anywhere else. And another thing is, building a more positive mindset about mental health. It really starts from adolescence, and it, like, forms a framework for your future life. It's not, I'm not saying it like, once you miss out on your adolescence you can never work on it, but definitely, like, it'll be more like encrypted, is that a word? I don't know. Yeah, I think so. It'll be more ingrained, and so it's easier for them to apply it to other scenarios. And learning that, their self-worth is not academics. It's really not defined by those stupid marks that you get on that piece of bloody paper. No, it is not. You're so much more than that. And I just hope people start acknowledging the beauty they really possess. Okay, and it can be physical, it can be talent, or whatever God has gifted them with. So I just believe, like, acknowledging your strengths is what really defines you, and not what the people expect you to be really good at and stuff like that. So I feel that itself, it would open up hell amount of opportunities for them when they grow up, because confidence is really important, and that really comes from within. It's not like going for public speaking. I really don't believe that is only confidence. It's quite ingrained, and it's quite within. So yeah, accepting yourself basically for whoever you are. Yep, that's my message to those adolescents.
So your self worth or your like perception of yourself is not limited in that one factor. If somebody thinks they're a good swimmer and then turns out they meet a faster swimmer, they're shattered. This happens so much in like UFC, like you watch so much. Like,
Yeah.
if somebody's unbeaten and they get beat, it just devastates them for
Yeah.
life. But if you like
People
if you-
bounce back.
yeah, people bounce back. That's one thing. But like, if that person was good at academics, I can't even speak. Academics, music, sports, literature, art, whatever. If they had their eggs spread out in different baskets, that would all that would, like, obviously everyone doesn't have the same ability, but trying these different things make you realize who you are as a person better, and I think that's a major key when it comes to
Major key.
yeah. Yeah. 100%.
By 15 you'll know who you are. I still don't know who I am. I'm still figuring it out. So I feel it's a lifelong learning process, but just being okay that it's a learning process, that just makes it easy to accept failure. Not even failure, I would just say, like, some opportunities that didn't work out, like, just
And obviously, this, like, I mean, from mine and Daksh's point of view, isn't coming from a clinical perspective. It's not even coming from a place that, hey, this is what
From
should
an
do,
educated perspective.
It comes from a perspective that, like, again, we're dealing with mental health as a normal thing. It's a thing that we've all been through. We've all experienced highs and lows. And in terms of, when we were 15 and 16 something, I think that was the age at which that was like the onset of my mental resilience, and that's when I kind of became aware of it. The only thing that I can ever say is, if you feel like you're making progress, and if you feel like people are making fun of you for that, it's probably an indication that you're going the right way about doing it. And you most definitely should not be let down by what others say, and most importantly, your progress is defined by where you are based on what you were. And on, you might have your best friends, and it happened to me, my own best friends, would put me down, not intentionally. It could be joking, but I never let that get me down. And I think it's about time that we all develop ourselves into a being where we have the strength to say, fuck what you think, it does not matter, especially if it's negative. that's just a negative, not a
Yeah.
positive thing. If someone's just being,
Yeah.
negative about the way if you genuinely feel like you're in a better place by doing what you're doing, more power to you.
Yeah.
And honestly, our best wishes to you in overcoming whatever you feel might be a hurdle.
Yeah.
This is my 2 cents on that.
I'd say 3 cents.
Third cent. But yeah, I think that was super informative. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for all your thoughts, Noorain, and I think
And
this was such a
advice.
stimulating conversation.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be heard, and it's something that needs to be reinforced from time to time. Hence,
Yeah.
our reason as to why we need to keep doing this again and again. Again, it's just about propagating that message that we talk about it 5 times. Hopefully, that will
Yeah, one of the times.
multiply where one of those channels and someone talks about it again and
Yeah.
it reaches
And-
more people. But all in all, thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining us. I think this was such a work conversation
100%.
and honestly the humor adds to it. It's
Yeah.
fun.
No, and
So-
I hope the humor doesn't take away from the serious things
Absolutely.
that we've,
Absolutely.
discussed.
I think more it needs to be a conversation that
Yeah.
needs to be had more, not just on podcasts. I think it's something that needs to be normalized enough where people talk about it over dinner, over
Yeah.
food, just normally where people accept that
Yeah.
it's normal,
100%.
So thank you so much for helping and making
Yeah.
that happen, Noorain. It was a pleasure to have you here with
Yeah.
us. And thank you so much for sticking through and watching this. We really hope
Yeah.
you've picked something out from this and there's something that you can take away. And
Yeah.
by all means, I do encourage all of you. We encourage all of you
We
to,
encourage, yeah.
I'm so sorry for making this person all the
No,
time
it's
when I
okay.
speak. When I say I, is both the two of us.
It's from the
and
eye
me.
of chronic nirvana.
Exactly. There's
From
no
the-
we in crowd. Fuck, there's no we in chronic nirvana. I just realized.
There is. What the fuck? Nirvana is spelled with a V.
We, W-E.
Yeah, but V.
There's no I. Fuck that.
Same thing.
Fuck, I need dinner. Yeah, and keep the message going, guys. I think that's what's super important over here. Like, keep that message flowing. Let's talk about it more. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you've taken something important away from this.
Yeah.
And as always, we hope to keep bringing more important conversations and woke discussions
Yeah.
to the table. Thank you once again. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you on the next episode.